Do you know what it feels like to be watched, even when you're alone? That night under the blood moon, I discovered that some eyes never close because they were never human in the first place. The story begins with a whisper of dread, a blood moon rising red as fresh wounds, casting shadows that seem alive. The narrator insists this is not a legend. It happened, and they barely survived to tell it. The promise is clear. What you're about to hear may keep you from sleeping tonight. I knew something was wrong when the moon looked back. It wasn't just red, it throbbed. A heart hung too high, the light thick as syrup on the roofs and gutters. The air tasted metallic, like a coin on my tongue, and the power lines hummed a note I felt more than heard. Somewhere far off, glass snapped like knuckles. A dog went silent mid-bark, as if a hand closed around its throat. I walked faster. The neighborhood had the empty look of a stage after the actor's run. Curtains fluttering, lights too bright, no audience. Blinds closed with cruel little clicks, as if the houses were blinking against the crimson glare. My shoes scuffed grit across the sidewalk. Every grain sounded loud, like it wanted to be noticed. The shadows had edges, knives of dark. At the corner, the traffic light was frozen red, of course red, and the crosswalk signal kept flashing the white walking man over and over, jerkily, like he was trying to flee. A factory siren moaned somewhere by the river, that long, wounded animal sound that could mean shift change or the end of the world. That was when I heard it, chanting. Not words, not exactly. The vowels were too round, too old, like a throat trying to remember a language it forgot before it was born. It came and went, rising and falling with the moon's pulse, slipping between the houses, arriving before its echo. The streetlight ahead flickered, and under it a woman stood. She looked like the city had given up and poured her out of itself. White dress that wasn't really a dress, more like hospital linen unstitched at the sleeves, moving when the wind didn't. Bare feet on asphalt. Her hair was wet where the light touched it, even though nothing fell from the sky. Her face was tilted up, eyes closed as if listening for a rain that never came. I should have crossed to the other side. I should have turned around, but the light kept stuttering and, between blinks, she seemed closer. The chanting dipped low, like a bow drawing across one string. I took a step. The moon's red slid over her skin the way blood crawls under a bandage. Another step. The heat of the bulb pressed on my scalp. The pole buzzed like a hive in winter. Her lips moved, not speaking. Counting, praying, I couldn't tell. The sound around us narrowed until it was just my breath and the tremble of the light. Then the moonlight reached her face. Her eyelids trembled, opened. They didn't open like ours do. No blink, no wakefulness. It was as if something already awake simply pulled its curtains back. Her eyes were lit from the inside, red not like dye but like embers, layered, living, with veins that weren't veins but tiny wandering cracks of light. The hum in the wires climbed a step. My throat forgot how to swallow. She looked at me, not across at me, through. She looked with a question that wasn't a question. Where have you been? Behind her, the shadows swelled and thinned as if breathing. The temperature fell. I could see each thread on her dress. I could see my own reflection inside her pupils, small and wrong, the way a reflection becomes when you stand too close to a funhouse mirror. Do you live here? I asked, because sometimes the mouth says anything to keep the rest of you from running. She tilted her head. The chanting rose, twisting on itself. It was coming from beneath the street, I realized, from the drainage grates, from the dark little mouths of the neighborhood. What happens, I heard myself ask, when something that shouldn't see you decides that it does? Her cheeks cracked, not skin, light. Hairline fissures of red light moved under her face like lightning behind clouds. The streetlight flared and went out. In the sudden half-dark, the moon poured stronger, a pressing weight on my shoulders. "Don't," she said. The voice wasn't hers. It was the chant, wearing a human shape, a borrowed coat. "Don't run." I hadn't moved. Not yet. But my muscles had already chosen. My left foot slid back, scraped the pavement. In the houses on either side, silhouettes appeared at windows and vanished. People watching a story they wouldn't admit existed. She lifted a hand. Palms pale, fingers long, too many knuckles. Her nails reflected the moon like wet glass. "Someone opened it," she whispered. and the whisper was inside my ear, not crossing the air. And now it opens us. What opens? The question leaped out of me like a moth from a jar. She pointed at the sky. Not the moon itself, something behind it. A darker circle inside the red. An absence that pulsed a beat late, like a second heart. The sidewalk tilted under me, molecular, wrong. The hum of the wires braided with the chanting and became a rhythm. A door down the block unlatched on its own. A swing set creaked through the playground was empty. The smell of hot metal and old roses pushed at my nose. She stepped forward. The light within her eyes sharpened, focusing, and I felt it press my sternum, searching for a keyhole. "Say your name," she said. "Say the one you were given before you were born." "I don't have—" I started, and the truth, horrible and soft, arrived. I did. On the red behind her, it crept toward my tongue like a taste I almost remembered. A crow dropped from the sky, without unfolding its wings, and hit the street with a soft, disgusting thud. It got up anyway. Its head was backward. It watched us with a patience no bird owns. The woman smiled the wrong way, like a wound deciding to be a mouth. "Do not look at her," came another voice, somewhere to my left. A whisper that knew me. A hand caught my sleeve. Human, warm, urgent. I turned just enough to see the old groundskeeper from the cemetery, Mr. Hale, standing half in shadow, eyes wild, hat forgotten in his fist. His lips barely moved. "Don't let her record you," he hissed. "If she learns your shape, she will finish it." "Finish what?" The humming climbed again. Somewhere a transformer popped with a blue-white starburst, and the night smelled like burnt sugar. The woman's gaze tightened, the feeling of a lens focusing. Red crept into the edges of my vision. "Run," Hale said. "But keep your face to the ground. Do not give her your eyes." The woman under the streetlight turned her head toward him without moving her neck. Bones don't do that, I thought. Then, bones do that now. Her mouth opened wider than breath allows. Something inside the dark shape behind the moon answered. I did the stupidest thing I could do. I looked back at her. The red in her eyes flared like blood under glass, and I felt a thread sink into me, a tug deep behind my own eyes, and a word I had never spoken began to unwrap in my mouth like a secret, choosing to be said. And the world snapped tight, as if the night had inhaled and forgot how to exhale. Morning came like a lie. The sun was bright enough to bleach last night from the streets, but the light felt thin, like skin stretched over something that wouldn't stop twitching. The town acted like nothing happened. Lawns trimmed, flags unfurled, sprinklers ticking like patient metronomes. But the silence had a bruise. People wouldn't meet my eyes. Shop windows were polished, yet every mirror I passed wore a veil of dust, a dish towel, a post-it, out of order. At the barbershop, the wall-length glass had been draped in a black sheet as if someone had died. Children drew with chalk on the sidewalk, circles within circles, a red stick figure with impossible eyes. They whispered about the lady in the red dress, then stopped when I came near as if my shadow was contagious. At the diner, coffee tasted like pennies. The bell over the door didn't ring, it coughed. The old man in the corner booth, stringy white hair, hands as knotted as roots, watched me hover, then curled a finger. I sat. He leaned in, and his breath smelled of rusted spoons. "It happens every 27 years, he said, voice stitched to a tremor. "When the blood moon opens her eyes, she chooses someone." I laughed. It cracked in my throat like cheap glass. "Sure. And then, what? A raffle? A parade?" He didn't smile. His spoon rattled against the mug. He pointed, not at my chest, not at my face, but a little to the left of me where the window's glare made an almost mirror out of the glass. "This time, it's you." The word "you" hung there, heavy, magnetic. For a heartbeat, my reflection in the diner window didn't match me. My mouth was closed. The reflections was whispering. I blinked hard, and the world snapped back. The waitress set down eggs I didn't order. The clock over the counter ticked from 10:02 to 10:02 again. "Why me?" I asked. "Because you looked." The old man's eyes glistened. "She can't enter what won't see her, but you gave her a name." He lowered his voice until it was barely more than vibration. "Don't let her in." "How?" He slid something across the table. A salt packet, the cheap kind that tears crooked. Line your thresholds, cover your mirrors. Don't speak to your reflection after sunset. And whatever you hear scratching, don't answer. I wanted to call him ridiculous. I wanted to call the groundskeeper, to demand more facts than warnings. Instead, I pocketed the salt like a child stealing a charm. When I left, the bell rang properly, bright and thin. Outside, the shadows seemed sharper, edges honed. All day, the town rehearsed normal. Lawnmowers harmonized. Church bells chimed but slightly off, a note sour by a hair. On Maple Street, a woman taped brown paper over a hallway mirror as if the glass could catch cold. A boy on a bicycle had tied a red ribbon to his handlebar. The ribbon dragged, leaving a scarlet line along the dust. I followed it without meaning to the cemetery gate. It ended there, wrapped tight around iron, like a vein around bone. The groundskeeper's shed was locked. Through the window, I saw his jacket slumped over a chair, sleeves empty, as if the rest of him had slipped out of it like smoke. On the desk, a little pile of black salt. Not the diner kind. The kind you sprinkle when you're past afraid and into bargaining. By dusk, my nerves felt like wires stripped of insulation. I taped a blanket over my bathroom mirror, propped a chair under the bedroom door handle, and poured a line of salt along the sill. I told myself it was for the mice. I told myself a lot of things. Night rose. The moon hadn't returned to red. It hung pale and watchful, the color of fingernails. Somewhere in the neighborhood, a radio caught a station that spoke backward for a few seconds, then went quiet. My house settled. My bones did not. Scratch. I froze. It came from the bedroom window. Slow. Deliberate. A fingernail dragged across glass. Each inch a sentence I didn't want to translate. Scratch. 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 I didn't breathe. I counted heartbeats. The line of salt lay unbroken, except hadn't there been more? I crouched and saw what I didn't want to see. 3 grains were missing, and in their place, the faintest impression of a fingertip pressed from the other side. "Don't answer," I whispered, repeating the old man's command like a prayer. Scratch. I couldn't help it. I reached for the curtain. My hand shook. The fabric felt damp, though it was dry. I peeled it back 2 inches. Nothing. Just the night. Just the town pretending to sleep. Just my reflection in the dark glass. My face pale, my pupils wide. "See," I told myself, "it's nothing." Then my reflection blinked. Not me. The glass me. It blinked on a delay, as if a thought traveled farther to reach it. I jerked back so hard I banged my skull on the window frame. Spots of light leapt. Behind them, for a heartbeat, I saw a woman's silhouette, long hair, a dress that moved like smoke in slow water. Her eyes... No. I told myself I was imagining. It didn't help. I inched forward again. The reflection stared at me with a patient hunger. I lifted my right hand. The reflection lifted its left, a beat late. Normal. That's normal. I pressed my palm to the glass. It pressed back. The pain was cool. Then, impossibly, warm. Something wrote across the inside of the window, letters smearing through frost that wasn't there. A fingertip from the mirror side. Backward at first, then legible as my mind flipped it. "Say my name." I didn't move. My tongue remembered last night. The way a hidden word had hooked into me when I met her ember-red gaze. A name I didn't know I knew, scaling my throat with barbed certainty. I had swallowed it back like a fishbone. "Don't let her in." My breath fogged the glass. The words crawled again. "Open." The room seemed to tilt, a houseboat rising on a swell that didn't exist. The line of salt quivered, though there was no breeze. The chair under the door handle creaked, as if someone leaned on the other side. From the mirror dark of the window, my reflection's eyes reddened. Not a flare, but a slow kindling, a coal waking. I stepped away. The floorboards protested. The scratching returned, not at the window now, but inside the walls, as if something had learned the blueprint of my home and was dragging its fingers along every nerve. The clock beside my bed clicked, and its hands jumped backward. 12:03 to 12:02. The digital on the dresser stuttered, then steadied on 12:02 again. Somewhere under the house, pipes groaned like a throat clearing to speak. Enough. I grabbed the blanket, dropped it over the glass and pressed the edges tight with tape. The room exhaled as if I'd slammed a lid on a pot at boil. Silence. Then, through the blanket, the faintest thud. A gentle, patient knock. Not from outside, from inside the reflection. I didn't sleep. I sat on the floor with my back against the bed, and the old man's salt packet sweat stuck in my fist until dawn bruised the horizon. When I finally stood, the tape on the blanket was bubbling with moisture. I peeled one corner, breath held. Before the fabric could lift enough to show the glass, something pressed against it from the other side, an outline of a face, nose, and open mouth flattening into the weave, too close, too eager. And inside my skull, as soft as a lullaby, the name I'd tried so hard to forget rose again, sharpened like a hook. I felt my lips part. "Don't," I told myself. My voice came out hoarse. The thing in the glass smiled, and from the hall mirror, draped, covered, safe, came a second answering tap. They were not outside anymore. They were practicing being me. I tightened my grip on the salt, swallowed the name, and did the only sensible thing left. I ran for the front door. When I yanked it open, the groundskeeper stood on the porch. His jacket was on backward. His eyes were cloudy with reflected moon. He didn't blink. He only said, in a voice that sounded like leaves scraping a gravestone, "You brought her home." Behind him, every window on the street bloomed red. The day had begun to pretend again, but the mirrors had stopped pretending at all. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw hers, red, endless, pulling me deeper, like a lighthouse inverted and pointed at my skull. The dark had a pulse. It matched the moon. I tried leaving town before dawn. I packed the salt the old man gave me, stuffed his rules into my jacket pocket, and drove. The highway should have been a straight vein out of here, but the lanes kinked into shapes roads weren't meant to make. Signs repeated. Mile markers counted down instead of up. When the radio found a station, it only hissed the same 3 words between static. "Say my name." The exit for I-17 appeared, then collapsed into cornfields, then corrected itself with a shriek of gravel. 10 minutes later, I passed the same sagging billboard, the same crooked streetlight. The gas station clerk didn't look surprised to see me again. He looked relieved, like a lost pet had found its way home. I drove faster. The moon seemed to drift with me, low and swollen, as if the town were a bowl and I was a fly trapped beneath its red lid. When the loop spat me back at the diner, the old man was on the curb with a plastic grocery bag. He held it out like an inhaler to someone already drowning. "Put salt on the thresholds, on the windowsills. 3 lines across every mirror and don't let them face each other," he rasped. "Don't answer if she knocks. And never say her—" The bulb in the diner sign popped in a blue flash. His mouth kept moving, but the sound fell out of his words and shattered on the pavement. In the silence that followed, I heard it. Not outside, but inside my head. Whispers, silk on bone. "Don't run, don't fight. Just look at me." I lurched back into the car. By the time I reached my street, kids' chalk drawings had smeared into red crescents. Every house had sheets over the mirrors, taped like wounds. My own front door had 3 white lines of salt already scored into it. The groundskeeper stood in my yard, hands black with dirt, eyes full of pity that made me want to scream. "You brought her home," he said, and for a second, I hated him for saying it out loud, as if naming a fire could cool it. Inside, I followed the rules like a ritual. Salt on the thresholds, windows sealed, every mirror draped, bathroom, closet. The little one by the coat rack I always forget is there. Then I found the compact in my nightstand drawer, cold as a coin on a corpse. I laid 3 clean lines of salt across its glass, and my nose began to bleed. The whispers came again, softer and more patient, the way you speak to a skittish animal. "Don't run, don't fight, just look at me." I pressed the old man's rules into the desk. 1. Do not say her name. 2. Do not open. 3. Do not let mirrors face each other. 4. If she knocks, do not answer. My blood dotted the paper like a signature. Scratch, scratch, scratch. The sound came from the living room window, slow and deliberate, fingers dragging across glass. I lifted the sheet a fraction. Nothing on the other side but night, but my reflection blinked. It didn't mimic, It chose. It lifted its hand and wrote from the inside of the pane in fog that hadn't formed, O-P-E-N. My throat tightened. I dropped the sheet. The knocking multiplied. Closet door, microwave, the black screen of the TV, the turned-off phone. Every reflective surface began to thud, as if someone were trapped just a sliver away, begging to be let through. In the bathroom, the covered mirror flexed like something breathing beneath a tarp. I remembered the old man's other warning from last night. The one he whispered when the diner lights failed and the whole room felt like a mouth ready to shut. She chooses because someone looks. That someone becomes the keyhole. What happens after she chooses? The groundskeeper pounded on my front door. "Don't answer," he hissed through the wood. "Make a circle. Salt." I poured salt in a trembling ring on the living room floor and stepped inside, the way you step into a grave to see how it fits. The house stilled for half a second. Then all the covered mirrors leaned inward at once. The circle narrowed the world to a halo of white. I felt safer and smaller and stupidly hopeful until the whispers turned playful. "Come now, little key. Circles are just doors drawn wrong." The compact on the nightstand clicked open by itself. I hadn't touched it. The 3 lines of salt across its face crawled like ants and bled apart. In the darkness behind the glass, I saw not my face, but a hallway that did not exist in my house, long ribbed with shadow lit by the pulse of the moon. At the far end, the woman in the red dress stood with her head tilted, as if listening to a music I couldn't hear. Her eyes were shut. "Don't look twice," the old man had told me. "Once is accident, twice is invitation." I told myself I wasn't looking, I was guarding. My reflection disagreed. It raised a finger to its lips and smiled with my mouth and her teeth. "Say it," the whispers urged. "Say my—" "Stop," I croaked, but the word came out warm and was taken. The salt ring hissed. A draft slithered along the floor like a tongue. The sheet over the big mirror bowed inward until the cloth stretched tight enough to show an outline, a cheekbone, a mouth. The knocking became a laugh without breath. The compact trembled in my palm. The house smelled like iron and rain. The moon outside the curtains slowed its pulse to match my heart. Patient as a snake. "Choice," she breathed inside me. "You can run until the world folds you back to me. You can hide until your bones remember the shape of my hands. Or you can open. Doors are kinder when they're invited." "Why me?" I whispered. "Because you looked. Because you were seen back." Blood dripped onto the compact's rim and disappeared, as if the glass were thirsty. The salt ring sizzled and thinned to lace. The groundskeeper shouted again, his voice skittered like a bug on tile. I knew the rules. I also knew rules were written by survivors, and survivors are just people who made the right mistake at the right time. If she got in, she would take the town again. If I let her in, maybe I could choose the terms. Maybe a keyhole can decide which way the door swings. The whispers crowded closer, all one voice now, all hers and mine. "Don't run, don't fight, just look at me." I took a breath that felt like falling and lifted the sheet from the big mirror. The glass was an eye, it opened. The lights died. The salt ring went dark. From inside the mirror, a red corridor breathed out and touched my feet like tide. I spoke the first half of her name. The house leaned in to listen. I knew the rules were failing the moment the moon grew a pulse. That last night the blood moon swelled until its rim scraped the roofs, until every gutter and wire gleamed like a vein. The old man's salt burned in a trembling ring around my bed. The mirrors were shrouded, taped, turned to face the wall, and still the house breathed like a throat before a scream. Every window showed the same word, written in steam from the inside. "Open." The scratching began at the far end of the hall. Not claws, nails, 10 of them counting down the baseboard toward me. The clock stopped between seconds. My phone lit by itself and typed letters I didn't touch, OP, and then the screen went black. I told myself I wouldn't make the same mistake again. Don't look, don't answer, don't speak even half a name. I looked. She was standing at the foot of my bed, closer than she had ever dared before. Red dress soaking up the dark like it was ink. Skin the gray of ash, eyes closed, not asleep, waiting. My throat closed the way a door closes. The room tasted like copper. A hairline crack opened in the nearest mirror that I had turned to the wall. I watched it through the glass of a picture frame because I couldn't bear to turn my head. The crack crawled, spidering across its back like frost, and behind the webbing, as if through ice, something moved. "Say nothing," the old man had said. "If she chooses you, silence is the last lock you own." But silence is heavy when the house is listening. Her eyelids lifted. It wasn't just that her eyes were red. There were distances inside them, orbiting storms. Looking into them was like looking off a cliff at night. The fear wasn't falling, it was floating. Something behind the moon looked back through her, something patient enough to wait 27 years and hungry enough to count them. "You've been chosen," she whispered, and my bed shook as if the mattress recognized her voice. "And once chosen, you never close your eyes again." I tried to scream, but the sound got lost in my teeth and came out as frost. The light bulbs filled with blood-colored light and then went black from the inside like throats cut underwater. My shadow climbed the wall and curled around the covered mirror as if to cradle it. From beneath the sheet, letters pressed outward, bulging the fabric like something breathing, OPEN. I told myself I had already ruined it earlier that day, when I'd broken the second rule and tried the highway. The road just bent into itself, delivering me back to the same gas station, the same crooked streetlight. In my panic, I had broken the third rule too. Don't speak even half her name. I had said it into the rear view to prove I didn't believe, and the mirror had smiled back without my face. Hal, only that much. And the sky had turned one shade darker. Now the unfinished syllable waited like a loaded cough in my throat. "Come," she said, not moving her mouth. The word arrived inside my head, wearing my voice. "Open." The sheet slipped from the mirror without fingers touching it. My reflection stood behind the glass, already turned toward me. He should have been afraid. He was smiling, crimson eyes in my face, teeth a little too many. The salt ring sparked once like a match. Then, as if a red tide rolled across the floorboards, the grains dissolved. The circle didn't break. It accepted me. I reached under the pillow and found the old man's last gift, a small paper packet brittle as a moth. "If you must look through this," he'd said. Inside was a piece of smoked glass the size of a postcard, black as the spaces between breaths. I held it up between us. Her eyes grew larger behind the dark. The room shrank to the rectangle. She was contained in that smoked pane, a century of storm inside a night that couldn't end. For a heartbeat, I believed I had her, like a moth trapped under a jar. Then the pane turned warm. "Half a name is half a door," she said, voice moving through the glass and into my hand. "Finish it." The house leaned. Nails let go of wood with the soft cries of birds. The mirrors in the hall all turned at once to face the bedroom. In each, the woman stood behind my shoulder, closer in every copy. I felt her breath against the back of my neck, except she had never needed to breathe. In the smoked pane, my reflection didn't hold the glass the same way I did. He held it higher. He was already opening his mouth. "Don't," I tried to say to myself. He finished the name. The red light didn't burst. It folded. The ceiling lifted off like a lid. The world pressed together into a single hot syllable and forced itself into my eyes. My body trembled in place while the bed floated, the way a drowning man floats, raising his face to the last cold inch of air and wondering why it tastes like coin. The woman in red stepped forward. No sound, no footfall, just the consequence of a promise, and she stood where my reflection had been. She leaned until her forehead touched mine. We shared a horizon. Behind her eyes, corridors aligned. Behind mine, the doors unlatched one by one like vertebrae popping back into place. "Look," she said. "Open." The glass didn't break. I did. My reflection took a step out of the mirror. He was so careful not to disturb the spilled salt that it felt like tenderness. He reached for my face and pressed his thumbs against my eyelids, not to close them, but to keep them open, as the last of the moon's light climbed down my throat. The world, house, bed, old man's rules written in pencil under my mattress, dissolved into a single color. Red, not paint, not fire. Attention, being seen so hard it turns you inside out. I understood then what choosing meant. It wasn't possession, it was employment. A vacancy behind a window filled. The last thing I remember before the room came back was opening my eyes and realizing they weren't mine anymore. I could see through the walls, through the dusty throats of the pipes. Through the roof to where the moon rested on its elbows and smiled without a mouth, I saw every mirror in town. In each my face waited politely for whoever would look. The woman stepped backward into the glass and closed her eyes. The smile stayed. Somewhere, far away, a child tugged the sheet off a bathroom mirror. Somewhere, a driver checked a rear view. Somewhere, a widow lifted a picture frame to dust it and paused at the shine. My vision kept leaping, click, 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 like a hunter choosing targets, like a night that never ends because someone has to keep the lights on for the dark. They will say the town pretended to sleep again. They will cover their mirrors and tape their windows and count to 27. They will whisper there was a boy who looked too long and was taken. But I'm not gone. I am what looks back. If on a blood moon night you feel the urge to check the window, to see whether what you hear is rain or fingers, don't. Do not finish the name that starts like a held breath. Do not answer the words spelled in steam. Because once chosen, you never close your eyes again. And if you look for her, you will find me looking for you.